Hello again. Here we are, Chapter 12, Leadership and Followership. Okay, leadership is process of guiding and directing behavior of other people in the work environment. So, guiding people to reach those organizational goals. There's formal leadership and informal leadership. Formal leadership is the official leadership based on the structure and the authority, excuse me, of the organization. And informal leadership is unofficial leadership um, that's given to someone by other members of the organization. So if you think back to our chapter on power and influence, it's those people that have, maybe who have referent power or people who have expert power that might be considered informal leadership. Okay, so there's a difference between management and leadership. Management is this idea of, planning and budgeting, day-to-day operations, organizing, staffing, that kind of thing. Leadership is more visionary. It's motivating people. It's, pushing for change, setting direction for the organization, that kind of thing. So there's a little bit of a difference. You can think of management as more day-to-day and leadership as long-term. Okay, you can just take a look at this. Leaders and managers, what's the difference between them in terms of how they, view goals and work and their relationships and that kind of thing, that they focus on things differently. And again, managers are more day-to-day. Leaders are a little bit broader based. Not to say that a manager can't be a leader, because a manager can be a leader, and a leader can be a manager, but generally speaking, their functions are a little bit different in the organization. Okay, so remember we talked about trait leadership. Trait theory in previous chapters. We've talked about personality. So certain physical attributes, unfortunately, we live in a world where your physical presence makes a difference. Your personality characteristics in terms of honesty and integrity and outgoingness and that kind of thing, and then your abilities. People who are highly articulate tend to be considered leaders. People who have good social skills, people who are insightful about others. Again, it could kind of go back to this whole idea of emotional intelligence to a certain extent. And emotional intelligence is something that we talk about in terms of the importance for leaders. Okay, leadership styles: autocratic, democratic, and laissez-faire. Autocratic is basically listen to, this is what I'm saying, and that's the way it is. They're very strong, they're very directive, they're very authoritarian. Democratic style is more looking at things in terms of collaboration with others in the workplace, and then and thinking of all people's opinions. Whereas laissez-faire is a little bit more hands-off, kind of, let things be where they fall, that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's talk about some different studies. There are Ohio State studies and the Michigan studies. So they look at things in terms of structure versus consideration, and Michigan looks at production versus, the task versus the people. And both look at things the same way. I mean, it's the idea of people over productivity, or people versus productivity, which is more important. Okay, so there's the leadership grid. There's you can see that in the book, and there are essentially 7 different types of leaders that they talk about. The organization man sort of is both focused on the both production and people. Authority compliance is this idea that only interested in production. Country club manager is really interested in the people and wants everyone to be happy, wants to minimize conflict. They don't have as much concern for production. They're mostly interested in keeping the people happy. Okay, the team manager produces a productive team of committed people. It's the idea they're really focused on the people and the task both. The impoverished manager is just that. They do just enough to get by. They're not really interested in either one. They don't really push people. Paternalistic, or father knows best. Someone who's very punitive in terms of threat. Punitive meaning they're really interested in punishment, and But they also say, well, if you do what I tell you, I'll reward you. If not, I'm going to punish you. And then the opportunistic leader is the one whose interest really is advancing themselves. They're not necessarily interested in helping others, nor are they particularly interested in production. They're just interested in how things are going to affect them. Okay, this is another important concept, the leader-member exchange, or LMX. And essentially what it means is that people hire people who, quote-unquote, look like them. And people can look like you in a variety of different ways. They can physically look like you in terms of gender and race and age. They can look like you in terms of discipline, people who come from the marketing department, people who come from finance. They can look like you in terms of where you went to school. They can look like you in terms of where you live. They can look like you in terms of, your lifestyle, that kind of thing. So how people define how people look like them varies. So there's the in-groups and the out-groups. And the in-groups are people in the inner circle, and they're given more attention, and they're the haves. And the out-groups are people who are, look under, they're ruled with, the formal rules and the policies. With the in-groups, it might be a little, those policies might be, get stretched a little bit. So it's, the in-group and the out-group, the haves and the have-nots, so to speak. LMX, leader-member exchange. Okay, so we're talking about, a lot of times how we talk about these days is inspirational leadership. So transformational leaders tend to inspire and excite people. They're the visionary. They really push people to this high level of performance. Charismatic leaders are the people who have this referent power, that they have their personal abilities and talents that in their likability that they use. They're very charming, they're great orators, they're highly articulate, they're very bright, they have great interpersonal skills, and that will be a charismatic leader. Authentic leaders are people who have really focused on values and value systems, and are very conscientious. Okay, so emerging issues in leadership: emotional intelligence. Of course, we've talked about that, being able to manage, being able to understand your own emotions and those of others and react to them appropriately. Trust, very important. When employees are asked what are the most important thing in a leader, upwards of 85% say trust. Gender and leadership, women in leadership has certainly become a big issue. We're trying, in our culture, trying to get more and more women in positions of leadership. There is lots of research, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a woman, but there is lots of research that says that women are better leaders. Women say we, not I. Women are consensus builders. Women are concerned about, keeping everybody more involved. This is a general conclusion from a variety of different types of research that's been done. Servant leadership is this idea that you are there. The leader is there to serve the people. That the leader there is there to work for the people who work for him or her, and to help their workers and their employees become the best they can be. And then abusive supervision is essentially just that, taking advantage of your people. Okay, we talked about leadership. Now we talk about followership. So followers, generally speaking, traditionally have been considered to be passive, but in fact, followers play a very important role, and they should also have a very active role, and they eventually have potential for leadership. That's, there's only one leader, and the next leader's got to come from a follower. Okay, so this it's a little bit difficult to see, but you can, let's see if I can increase that. Hang on a second here. There we go. Okay, so it's looking at passive versus active, and dependent versus independent. So the middle, the neutral zone, are the survivors. They just do what they can. They're a little mostly passive, but they do have some voice. Sheep are people who are very passive and don't participate in any kind of critical thinking or analysis. Yes, people are very active, but they're very uncritical. There's no analysis going on in their heads. They're just doing it because they're told to do it, but they're active in doing it. The alienated follower is the one who's passive, but thinks a lot, has a lot of critical analysis skills, and thinks a lot, but just does it, and they don't voice their opinion. And then effective followers are people who are active, but also try to look at things objectively and have some sort of critical analysis. And when I say critical analysis, I mean that in a positive way, and understand what they're doing. They might question it, but they're interested and they're engaged in the process. Oh, sorry, my mistake. Okay, guidelines for leadership. So essentially, that people should appreciate everyone's different, and people should appreciate how people are different. Oftentimes when an organization or a firm gets a new leader, things can be a little rough, but because people are used to a certain thing, but everyone has different personalities and that kind of thing, and different talents. So leaders should be challenged to challenge the organization without destroying it. So coming up with new ideas. That there should be participative, because this idea that leaders should enhance the well-being of the follower. So they should be engaged in what the followers are looking for. And also that things are relative. So different leadership situations call for different leadership talents and behaviors. So if you're in a crisis, you might want to have autocratic leadership. There's a little bit, if it's something that's not super important, then maybe a laissez-faire style is good, because you want to kind of let things flow. So that there's different situations call for different types of talents. And generally speaking, that good leaders are likely to be good followers, because they understand what it takes to be what leadership takes. Okay, so there you go. Chapter 12, Leadership and Followership. Thanks, everyone.